He is alive, yet also dead. His body is millions of years old. He has moss growing all over. His very touch is toxic. He is the Bogged. And this is the story. It all begins long ago, back when the overworld was a very different place. Imagine a world where colossal creatures roamed, their footprints imprinting tales of ancient journeys upon the surface. Many of these majestic beings are now nothing more than mere whispers in the winds of time, having left behind only fragments of their existence, shrouding their mysteries in the veils of these ancient times. But still, this was an ancient realm where the very air hummed with the melody of exotic creatures, their forms obscured by the dense landscapes of an untamed wilderness. From the depths of murky waters to the imposing heights of towering canopies, life flourished in abundance, weaving a complex tapestry of interconnected ecosystems. In this primal paradise, where the sun casts its golden rays upon an evergreen expanse, the jungle reigned supreme. But amidst the lush embrace of foliage, danger lurked in the shadows. Amid the dense jungle foliage and beneath the blazing sun, skeletons, typically known for their desolate existence in dark caverns and abandoned mines, found themselves in a new environment, ripe with opportunity. With an unparalleled resilience, these skeletal beings adapted to the warm climate, their bones soon being covered with a green cloak of moss. And over time, this moss became not just a mere decoration, but a vital component of their survival strategy. Drawing nutrients from the soil and moisture from the humid air, the moss flourished upon their skeletal frames, intertwining with their very essence. But the transformation did not end there. In a remarkable display of evolution, these skeletons began fashioning suits from the lush moss, weaving together a protective layer that shielded their fragile bones from the elements. As they roamed the jungle landscapes, these moss-clad skeletons moved with an eerie grace, the once barren forms now covered in a tapestry of greenery. Yet, perhaps the most astonishing adaptation of them all was the gradual shift in their skeletal complexion as the moss thrived upon their bones. The skeleton's bones took on a subtle green hue, blending seamlessly with the vibrant foliage that surrounded them. This transformation was not merely cosmetic, for it also served a practical purpose, as it allowed the skeletons to harness the power of photosynthesis, and thus they were able to generate extra energy and sustain themselves even better. Also, these greener bones helped keep them hidden from the world's predators, and so, amidst the towering trees and tangled undergrowth, these green-skinned skeletons became an integral part of the jungle ecosystems, their presence a testament to the remarkable adaptability of life in all forms. Now, they mostly lived rather simple lives, as they wandered aimlessly, shot down enemies with their bows and arrows, while obviously making sure to tip their arrows with the sharpest moss for more effective kills. And whenever they would inevitably die, their bones would fall to the ground and melt into the land. And then, over the next few days, their bones would harness the strength and the life force within those luscious growths, and then, during the peak of full moon, they would rise into life once more. This cycle of life, death, and rebirth repeated over and over and over and over for millions of years without disruption. Well, that was until it was abruptly halted by an unimaginable force, an ice age. The icy grip of the great ice ages descended upon the once warm jungle landscape with a brutal ferocity, and the green-skinned skeletons found themselves faced with a harsh and unforgiving reality. Either stay where they were and hope that the world would stabilize, or move and prayed that wherever they went, they would have more favourable conditions. Now no skeleton was foolish enough to pick the first option, and thus they all began to move, starting the great skeletal migration. Now initially, some of the skeletons, with their ancient affinity for cold environments, ventured towards the frigid regions, believing it to be a sanctuary from the encroaching chill. After all, as undead creatures, they were naturally drawn to the cold, and maybe, if they followed it, they could be led to cooler, yet manageable regions within the world. However, their plant-like adaptations proved to be their downfall in the face of this extreme cold. Despite their preference for lower temperatures, the sudden drop in temperature proved too much for their delicate balance of undead forms and plant-based biology. The freezing temperatures caused the moisture within their moss-covered bodies to crystallize, shattering their fragile structures and rendering them lifeless once more. Except, this time, there was no rising back. Meanwhile, those who attempted to flee towards the warmer climates encountered their own set of challenges, for as they journeyed through the icy landscape in desperate search of refuge, they found themselves ill-equipped to withstand the harsh conditions. The sudden transition from the cold to the warmer environments proved too much for their fragile forms to endure. The rapid changes in temperature caused their mossy exteriors to wither and decay, leaving them vulnerable to the elements, and ultimately leading them to their demise. But amidst this extinction event, there was one unforeseen occurrence that stood out among the tragedy. A small group of green skeletons, perhaps seeking shelter or simply navigating their way through the changing landscape, stumbled upon a serene lake nestled amidst the frozen wilderness. However, as they traversed its icy surface, a sudden shift in the frozen terrain sent them plummeting down into its depths. They were doomed. Or so it seemed, as instead of meeting their end, these skeletons found themselves encased in a tomb of ice. The water was freezing, and so they were saved. Well, sort of. As they were now locked away in a timeless embrace, suspended in a state of tranquility, their moss-covered forms preserved in pristine condition beneath the frozen surface. And so, as the ice ages came and went, these ancient skeletal creatures lay dormant beneath the icy waters. The war between the villagers and the illagers was raging on, each side desperate to destroy their opponent, but with neither of them having any successes in their missions. It was almost as if someone or something was stopping this war from ending. But still, as the eternal conflict raged on between the illagers and the villagers, a wary band of pillagers believed they had found a way that they could win this war, as maybe they needed a height advantage to defeat their opponent. And so, determined to gain the upper hand within this conflict, they ventured into the treacherous terrain of a towering mountain range, their eyes scanning the horizon for a strategic advantage over their adversaries. This could work. If they were up here, they could rain down a volley of arrows upon those evil villagers, and the villagers would be unable to stop them. It was genius. They could win this war. And so, things were looking quite good. But, amidst their ascent, a blizzard began to brew. It was vicious, and it was going to be with them in a mere few hours. They needed to do something quickly, as they didn't have the time to descend back down that mountain. So, there was only one thing they could do, and that was to create a shelter to defend against the icy winds and sharp snow. And thus, they hastily constructed a makeshift camp upon the frigid shores of this small lake that they had just found, their tents providing a sanctuary from the harsh elements. as the blizzard intensified, enveloping the mountain in a blanket of white. The pillagers huddled together within the confines of their camp. They prayed that this would save them, but despite the bitter cold and the howling winds outside, a sense of anticipation hung heavy within the air as they awaited for the storm to pass, their thoughts consumed by visions of conquest and glory. But as the snow continued to fall, blanketing the mountain in a shroud of white, the fate of the Illagers became uncertain. Would they actually survive this? Well, they didn't know anymore, and their tents were starting to break open. Things were not looking good. Serious damage had been done, and yet all the Illagers were alive, and so they emerged from their makeshift campsite. The tents had been buried under layers upon layers upon layers of snow, but after a short little dig, they were back up to the surface. And as they began their ascent up that mountain, their eyes were suddenly drawn to a strange sight beneath the frozen surface of that lake. Bathed in the soft glow of sunlight, these green forms lay trapped beneath the icy embrace, his lime hues shimmering outwards with an otherworldly brilliance. Their curiosity was piqued, and so these pillagers wasted no time in sprinting to action. With shovels and picks, they began to dig furiously. They had never seen anything like that before. It was a frozen entity. Block by block, they uncovered more of this mysterious creature, the skeletal forms shrouded by a lush covering of moss. But as they gazed upon this being, a sense of awe and trepidation washed over them. This was no ordinary creature. It was a relic of a bygone era, a remnant of a time long forgotten, and so there was something undeniably captivating about its presence. Something that stirred the darkest depths of their souls, and so driven by a desire to unlock the secrets of this enigmatic being, the Illagers turned to the dark arts, drawing upon their forbidden knowledge of necromancy and sorcery. Channeling the essence of the zombies that roam this land, they wove a potent spell, seeking to breathe new life into these ancient skeletal forms. It was working. They were coming back to life. The zombie essence was filling in the missing gaps that were preventing them from being alive. And so everything began to shake and glow, and then they began to move as the Bogged were born. Undead beings of unparalleled power and enigmatic origins, with skeletal bodies encased in vibrant moss and fused with the relentless hunger of the undead. They sit as a fusion of zombie and skeleton, a living embodiment of the mysteries of the ancient world. As the Bogged rose from their icy slumber, their eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, their skeletal forms pulsating with a dark, sinister energy. However, as the Bogged ventured nearer to these Illagers, they witnessed its toxic nature. A dangerous realization dawned upon them. These enigmatic beings, born of a bygone era, possess a toxicity so potent that it threatened not only their existence, but also the very fabric of the world all around them. The world was no longer equipped to deal with these life forms, and yet the Illagers had foolishly brought them back, and so a new peril had emerged, as the ecosystems upon these ancient beings were unmatched within this new modern world, and so there would be no resistance to their growth, as the world was not prepared, as nothing like these creatures had stepped foot on this world in tens of millions of years. And so, with the potential to decimate entire populations, they posed a formidable threat that just could not be ignored. Yet, in the midst of this peril, the Illagers saw an opportunity. This new mob was a weapon that could be wielded against their sworn enemies, the villagers. with their Bogged under their commandment, they envisioned a devastating onslaught that would bring their adversaries down to their knees. Their toxic presence bringing in the dawn of a new era of illager control. But such power came with a price that the illagers were not yet prepared to pay. Knowing the toxicity of the Bogged posed a grave danger to their own kind, they realized they needed a solution first. A cure that would save themselves from the deadly poisons of the Bogged. And so, with a heavy heart and a sense of urgency, the illagers made their way down that mountain and over to the murky depths of the swamp. A place where toxic substances permeated the very air, and intelligent beings dared not to tread here. There, amidst the tangled roots and dirty waters, they sought out a group of Vindicators, powerful sorcerers with the ability to wield dark magic, and bend it to their will. With the Vindicators at their sides, the illagers requested them to cast a spell upon the Bogged. A spell that would transform them into creatures akin to the slimes that roam the swamps. Their toxic nature subdued, with their forms altered to being hidden away and to only be revealed during the nights of full moon. With a flick of their wrists and a whispered spell, the Vindicators cast their magic, and the Bogged began to change, their bodies shifting and morphing until they had vanished into the shadows. Satisfied that the Bogged were now contained within the toxic confines of the swamp, the illagers departed, their minds already turning to their next move. But little did they know, none of them would ever return. Their plans would be forever derailed by the very forces they sought to control. All those pillagers, as they left the swamp, were ambushed by the mighty iron golems. There were no survivors. As for the Vindicators, well, they left in a different direction. But still, most of them also died, killed by the wrath of the villagers as they attempted to make their way to their mansion. Only one Vindicator remained, so he was the only one left who held the knowledge of these creatures. Also, in his possession, he held an item that no other being on the surface of the overworld could even imagine. Bogged spawn eggs. Now, that was the vital piece in creating a cure for these monsters, and so there was still hope. However, that Vindicator would never go back, as before he could return to the mansion and develop the antidote, he was ordered on a mission to the savannah alongside a new group of Vindicators. But what they ended up seeing there, well, it horrified them, and it changed them, and their lives would take a very different turn. And so, to learn what happened next, you'll need to watch this video.